Much has been written about the healing brush since its introduction a dozen years ago. Yeah, can you believe it? A dozen years ago. That's just crazy. Suffice it to say, I'm pretty sure you've used it before. In short, the healing brush affords us the great luxury of cleaning up simple to complex imperfections almost magically. But it's not 100% in every application. It is pretty close though. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you some tips and techniques for improving the results of the healing brush so that you can create more and clean up less. As with any retouching project, I always recommend working on a copy of the layer that you're looking to enhance, or in this case, even a blank layer. And in fact, that's the route we're going to take. So I'm clicking on the new layer icon within the new layer panel. Now we're going to rename that layer Healing Brush. Of course, this is a healing brush technique video, so that's very aptly named. Now with that layer created, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be working on. Now I've got a portrait here of a beautiful young lady. Wouldn't really need a whole lot of work, but I think there's a couple things that she'd appreciate enhancing. For example, right underneath her nose, you can see that we've got a little bit of a blemish here from perhaps a previous area of acne. We've got a couple little spots on the forehead, maybe a little wrinkle right there. We're going to go ahead and clean those up using a variety of different techniques that I've found to be very helpful when I'm retouching. Now the first thing I want you to do is take a look at the options bar right up here at the top. I'm hovering my cursor over this icon to the far right where it says Sample All Layers. With this button selected, we are enabling pen pressure to affect the size of our brush, meaning I'm going to vary the width of the brush based on how hard I physically press my pen to the tablet. One of the things you want to do when you're using the healing brush is use only as large a brush as absolutely necessary to cover the area that you're looking to enhance. Using too large a brush can sometimes create a scar-like effect, and obviously we don't want to create any more work than we already have. Alright, moving over here to the left, you want to make sure that Sample All Layers is selected. Sample All Layers is going to do just that. It's going to sample across all the layers within your image. Now in this case, I only have two layers. I have the background layer, our original layer, and then I have the healing brush layer. Now because this is blank, if I did not have that selected and I started to heal on this image, you would see effectively nothing happening because I'm healing nothing, and that's obviously not what we want to do. So click on Sample All Layers. Now when I make these little wispy strokes across my image, you can see that it's going to start to heal the areas that I'm painting on. Now if I were to press my pen lightly to the tablet and gradually press a little bit harder, you can see that it fans out there. That is way too big a brush. That's not exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to lessen the size of that brush by using either my left or right bracket keys to go up or down, or the touch ring on my tablet. Now when I run my finger around the touch ring, left or right, I can increase or decrease the size of that brush. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that forehead and take a look at some of the other areas that need to be enhanced. So you can see here that I'm making these short little wispy strokes, varying the amount of physical pressure that I place with my pen on the tablet, pressing lightly to get a very thin stroke, and pressing a little bit harder to make the stroke kind of fan out a bit. Now with my non-dominant hand, I'm right-handed by the way, my left hand or thumb is on the keyboard holding down the space bar, and by holding my space bar down, tapping my pen to the tablet with the temporary hand tool, dragging either left or right, I can zoom in or out of the image. So let's zoom out a little bit there, and I'm going to toggle the visibility icon of that healing brush layer on and off so we can see where we started from and then where we've ended up. Again, it's a great idea to heal on a blank layer because, of course, again, you can toggle the visibility on and off, or you can also lessen the opacity of the layer to bring back some of that original texture. Now, in this case, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and leave it up at 100%. I'm going to show you a different scenario where you would want to heal on a separate layer and then dial back the opacity. Zooming back out of my image, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the eyes. Obviously, that's a very important part of our image. Now I'm going to create another new layer, and this time I'm going to call this left eye. And it might seem pretty obvious that we're going to work on the left eye, so again, very aptly named. Now up until now, we have been using the spot healing brush in the toolbox. If I hover my cursor over it long enough, you're going to see that it says spot healing brush. There's another tool right underneath here called the healing brush, and this is actually the one that was introduced way back when. It was the original healing brush tool. Now with this tool, it's a little bit different. What you need to do is treat it a lot like you would the clone stamp tool. You need to select a point from which it is going to heal. The spot healing brush does a little bit of thinking for you, and it matches the area that you're healing based on the different textures around it. Now with the healing brush, by selecting an area that you wish to heal from, it's important to know that you're selecting not really color like you would with the clone stamp tool, but in this case, texture. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key and I'm going to tap a little bit below this little wrinkle right down here underneath her eye. Now, before I even paint with this, I'm going to point out a couple of things up in the options bar. This is important to know. Once again, the tablet control button is checked. You can see that with this on, I'm going to vary the size of my brush based on how hard I physically press my pen to the tablet. Sample all layers is selected from its default, which is current layer, to all layers. This is again going to enable me to heal to a blank layer. And then this next box over here, moving again to the left, I have aligned checked. This is very similar to the clone stamp tool. Again, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be selecting a source point, and then as I heal, where I paint is going to stay aligned with my original source point. And so underneath, again, I'm going to select a soft area, kind of right below, about an inch below the wrinkle underneath the eye, and I'm just going to make these short little wispy strokes right underneath here, and I'm painting a couple of strokes to get rid of that little wrinkle. Now, I'm not too concerned with how good a job it's doing at this point, because ultimately what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sampling from a couple different areas and then lowering the opacity of the overall layer so that I could bring back some of that original texture. So now we've gotten rid of that line or wrinkle underneath the eye, and I'm going to dial the opacity back of the original layer to say, I don't know, 50% or so. And now if I toggle the visibility of that layer on and off, you can see that we have lessened the wrinkle underneath the eye. And that's an important word right there, lessening it. Keep this in mind. When you're retouching, whether you're retouching someone that's 16 or 65, you don't necessarily want to remove wrinkles altogether. You simply want to downplay them. You don't want to make someone that's 65 look like they're 16 or vice versa, of course. But again, you want to lessen the effect that you are enhancing. Same kind of thing right down here. And I'm on a separate layer, so I'm not going to address these other areas just yet. But I'm going to come over here to the right eye, and I'm going to create another new layer. And I'll go right eye on this one, and I'll go ahead and click Enter or Return. And once again, I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key. I'm going to sample this smoother area right below the wrinkle, and I'm just going to make a couple of short, wispy strokes to kind of get rid of that. I'm resampling so I can match the texture that I'm looking to heal. There we go. And a little bit there. That looks pretty good. And right down here. And now we'll go ahead again and lower that opacity down to say 50% or so. I'm doing this entirely by eye, no pun intended. Again, what we want to do is we want to simply lessen the effect of those wrinkles. And in fact, if I toggle that visibility on and off, you can see it's pretty subtle right there. And again, we're looking at the right eye, and then we have the left eye. If I hold down the Option or Alt key and click on the visibility icon of the background layer, we can look at the overall before and the after. Again, we're just looking to tone it down just a little bit. And you can adjust this based on the opacity of the layer that you're working on. All right, let's do one more layer. I'm clicking on the new layer icon once again in the layers panel. And this time I'm going to say acne for the name of this layer. And we're going to address the acne on this young lady's face. I have the healing brush once again selected, and I'm going to increase the size of my brush using either the right bracket key or the touch ring on my tablet. And I'm going to paint over the area right here. I'm going to resample, holding down the Option or Alt key, tapping just to the left of the acne, and I'm going to paint over that. And we've gotten rid of that blemish right there. And I'm going to do this one right over here. And once again, resampling, and I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key once again and just kind of paint around right up there. Now, I've gotten rid of it entirely, and that's okay in many cases, but in the case where you might create a smoother area than you wanted to, here's a little tip for you. Command-Shift-F or Control-Shift-F. That's going to bring up the fade command. What this is basically going to do is enable you to undo on a slider. If I drag this all the way down to 0% opacity, you can see it comes back. Or if I drag it back up here to say, again, 50% or so, it goes away. And then 100%, you can see it goes away entirely. So this is a great way to fade or somewhat undo the effect that you've just enhanced, or just applied, I should say. Now, this is perfect for when you are enhancing adults with wrinkles underneath the eye, or you're going to go step by step with pulling back some of the enhancements that you've made. So you've got the opacity of the overall layer, but you also have the option to fade each individual step. So if I hold down Command and the spacebar, or Control and the spacebar, tap and drag to the left, let's back out just a little bit. Now we can see this young lady's full face. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt. I'm going to once again click on the visibility icon of the background layer. There's our before and there's our after. So again, very subtle enhancements, but that can make all the difference in a good image and a great image.